Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
And I'm Scott War, and today we're joined by Rickey Gates. He's an accomplished ultra runner, adventurer, and storyteller. Rickey spent the last 2 decades exploring some of the most incredible trails in the world, running along coasts, over mountains, and across deserts and canyons. In this episode, we're going to dive into Rickey's latest project, which is the field guide to classic trails in North America. Mm-hmm. I think it was inspired, and we'll get the full story here. It was inspired by the legendary book, The 50 Classic Climbs of North America. And Rickey set out to create a similar guide for trail runners. If you don't know Rickey, outside online named Rickey one of the most fittest real men in America, Don Freeman.
Well, I can see it.
I don't know what real. I don't know how they came up with that title. He was also named U.S. Track and Field Mountain Runner of the Year for 2007. He's a renowned ultra runner and adventurer. He twice won the grueling Mount Washington road race, and he has the fastest known time for running Yosemite's Half Dome. I've done Half Dome a couple times, and I don't think I ran any part of that. So Rickey is in fact the fittest real man in America. Rickey, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about this field guide to classic trails in North America.
My bio, it sounds like, is a little out of date there. The
it
Half
is.
Dome record, yeah, just a little bit. The Half Dome record has been taken down, I think, a couple times, but by one person in particular, the late Dean Potter, most known for his climbing and base jumping and wingsuit adventures. I got to actually chat with him. This was a long time ago, 15 years ago, about that Half Dome record. And I didn't realize lights were going off in his brain there, but he was all of a sudden said, that time, that belongs to me. That doesn't belong to some trail runner. So I apologize. What was the question?
It was, tell us about this field guide to classic trails of North America. We've actually teased it a little bit in our John G pre-ad sponsorships that we did a couple weeks ago. That we mentioned the rim to rim to rim field guide. But tell us about this field guide. How did it come to be?
Yeah, so as we were talking about before the show, or as you just mentioned, the 50 Classic Climbs of North America is something of a Bible for the climbing community. It sits on the bookshelf, and most climbers have maybe climbed one or two of those. It's more an inspirational book. You sit there and you kind of look at it and you start to dream a little bit. That book was nearly impossible to find for, 10 or 15, 20 years when there was only a single edition of it. And so people were paying, several $100s in order to get their hands on a copy of it.
Oh, wow.
It's since gone to reprint, and I have a copy, and I just love it. I love reading through it. I have done a bit of mountain climbing and some climbing. I wouldn't consider myself a mountaineer by any sense. But I just appreciate this idea of a few people, sitting down and discussing what the classics are and what a classic is in general, like what inspires conversation, what inspires action. And so there's a few trails, this is for me personally going back 10 to 15 years. There's a few trails that are like across the United States, just must-do trails. If you're a trail runner, it's on your bucket list. And the mention of classic isn't even there. It's just it's part of it. And so I got to thinking, what would this book look like for trail runners, and what sort of parameters would I put up personally to differentiate, one trail from another trail, all of these things. So that's kind of, it's been in the works for a decade, and I was super excited to make a new partnership with Janji, with the clothing brand. Since it's still so young, I feel the need to kind of introduce them a little bit. Clothing brand based out of the Boston area, pretty young company. But in my opinion, they're making big headway in the sport in terms of diversity and the message that they're trying to put out there.
And functional gear. I mean, it works. It's strong. You don't regret putting it on when you're out there. You're saying, that this does work. So 50 trails, or excuse me, 50 mountains to climb in that book. It was hard to find, and now with the second release, do you plan on putting together 50 trails in America? 50 trails in your book?
Yeah, so I have to rewind a little bit more. The same person that put the two of us or the three of us in contact, Mike Bernstein, who's a co-founder of Janji. This is maybe 7 or 8 months ago. He asked me if I'd heard of these two other guys, Ian McClellan and Andrew Cochran, Andy Fitz on Instagram. And I said that I hadn't necessarily heard of them. He said, well, that's interesting. They're working on a project that sounds a whole lot like your project.
Oh.
And so he set up a meeting with the three of us. And sure enough, and the collective conscious allowed for this kind of thing to happen. The three of us were all working on the same project, and we compared notes, and I also think compared perhaps work ethic and amongst other things, compatibility, and we decided to go forward on this project together. We haven't announced this to the public yet, kind of depending on when this podcast gets released. It should be pretty soon. We're planning on meeting up in a couple weeks to go run, to go run the Lewitt Trail around Mount St. Helens up in Washington, Oregon, Washington. You guys can help
Where
me
is
out
it,
there.
Don?
It's right
You've run that, haven't you?
Well, if you start in Oregon, you'll get through it. By the time you get to Washington, I don't know where it is. But I've got to think that's one of the best ways to qualify the group. You have conversations out on that trail, talking about things that might be in that book or what's important to talk about on a particular adventure that people would want to read. I think that would be the best place to have a business meeting, is on your feet in the middle of a trail.
That's where Don and I have most of our business meetings. I'm curious, as you're saying these classic trails, and if you make it to 50 or you go beyond, if you were to ask Don and myself what classic trails, what would be in our book of classic trails, it would be completely different than yours. You're more well-traveled. You've run a lot more different trails. I'm curious, how did you, with these other collaborators, come up with these classic trails? Did you use some kind of criteria?
Yeah, so without question, this list is going to be subjective. And that's also talked about right away in the 50 classic climbs of North America. What person, and it's super fun to have this conversation with the two fellas that I'm working with, because we have had disagreements.
I'm sure.
And it's super fun to defend, why I think this trail should be on the list and why I think this trail perhaps shouldn't be on the list. Shuffle it over to the appendix or what have you. But kind of the criteria that we have put together is, number one, can the trail be completed in under 24 hours? So this is to differentiate it from the John Muir Trail, from the Appalachian Trail, and the Long Trail. All of these efforts that are absolutely incredible, but can I really try and convince someone to go out there and do that trail when I think it's whether it be permits or just simple scheduling and physical ability is out of a lot of people's realm.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't to say that the trails that made the list are by any means easy, but they can be done in a 24-hour period.
And you could define that as it takes 24 hours to do, but you could divide it up in 2 or 3 days if you aren't Rickey Gates
right.
capable. You could get out there and run it a bit different.
Totally. And some of them we flat out suggest, this can be done in 24 hours. And the example that I'm thinking of is the Lost Coast Trail, Northern California. And it's, 50, the full Lost Coast Trail is 54 miles. And it can very easily be broken up into two different sections, kind of the northern section, 24 miles, and the southern section, which is about 30 miles. And, I enjoyed doing it in one day and in 14 hours when I did it in that manner a few years ago. It's a whole lot more fun to do in 2 days. Hang out in Shelter Cove, get yourself a beer, get an Airbnb with a hot tub, you get some fish and chips, what have you. So that's the parameter there, that it can be done in 24 hours.
So I know we're going through the criteria. So far we started with 24 hours, but I've got another question before we get to the next criteria that's in your list. What kind of things, when I open that chapter up, I see Lost Coast Trail, what kind of guidance are you giving me? Are you saying, hey, if you're, a Rickey Gates, here's how it might go down, but if you're a Don and Scott, here's how it might go down? What kind of hints do you give us? Do you tell us where the fish factory is to get some of those treats?
The fish factory?
Oh, didn't he say you get fish? You can stop and get
fish and chips.
Fish and chips. Yeah, Scott, were you paying attention?
Yeah, he was focused on the beauty of the trail.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I think that we're still kind of figuring that parameter out because, that trail doesn't have as many people that have done it, not as much to compare to, but say the Grand Canyon has now been done. The double crossing of the Grand Canyon has now been done in under 6 hours. I've run it as hard as I possibly can in, I think, just over 7 hours. That was a different person a decade ago. Now I'm more in like the 10 to 12 hour range because I like to stop and enjoy myself and take some pictures and take a nap at Phantom Ranch and jump in the river. But it could also take me, if I'm having a hard day or my companions are having a hard day, it could take 14, 15, 16 hours. And so we're trying to figure out that range, what that range means. I think it's super helpful having established FKTs, fastest known times, on most of these trails. And it's been helping me a lot in terms of like going to do a trail that I haven't done before, checking out what the FKT is on that trail. And generally what I've been doing lately, like if I want to go out for me personally and enjoy that trail and stop a whole bunch and take some pictures, and I'm not going in with 100% fitness, maybe I'm going in with 70 or 80% fitness. I double the time of the FKT, or like 1.5, whatever it might be. And that's been really helpful. So that's a little bit of an equation that we're still trying to figure out, but certainly providing the FKT information, knowing that that's on the edge of superhuman, and then providing a more realistic, like here's the every person sort of time.
What about information on a water source? You can stop in this town and pick this up, or how about aid? Do you plan on covering some of that through the book?
Yeah, all of those things are going to be covered. Generally, I believe that if someone is going to be doing any of these trails, these are all, as you can kind of gather so far, more challenging, more committing trails. I expect and hope that anyone that gains inspiration from these is going to be doing a little bit more research than just the 2,000 words that we're hoping to put out for each. Because in those 2,000 words, we're trying to cover a lot of ground, seeing things in these trails that I feel like have been overlooked a little bit in other write-ups that I've read and in other guidebooks. And if as I said, these are kind of like bucket list trails. Maybe if you love the trail so much and you want to take someone else out there, you do the trail a second time. But a lot of these trails, I think people will most likely possibly just do once in their life. And what for me makes that the most rich experience, if you're just going to do something once, is to do a lot of research on where you are before you go. And for me, that's personally been, researching the geology, the ecology, the actual trail history, like why is that trail there? Um, and then of most importance to me lately has just been researching the human history of that area.
Hmm.
We have, such an interesting fascination with wilderness, or this idea of wilderness, and like this almost like um, misconceived notion that wilderness is untouched by humans. And I think in a lot of ways that feels really good to us, when we think of ourselves as different from the environment that we're living in. But in reality, so many of these trails have such an immense amount of human history that that the running history on the trail is fascinating. The recent history on the trail, like why the trail is there in a modern age, is fascinating. But then you go back to a lot of areas, the logging history, the mining history,
Right.
and then how were those people able to, you know, uh, to benefit from the land, and who was there before them. And so a lot of my research is just going into the Native American history of each of these places, and just kind of like understanding a much deeper connection to the land than I have personally in a lot of my trails and travels and running in the past 25 years.
What
So that's been, go ahead.
what surprised you most about looking through some of this historical aspect of some of these trails? How they started? Did it start just as a deer trail, or was it something the Native Americans used to travel from tribe to tribe, or was it all from logging? Where can you shed some light on some surprises that you had about some of our great trails that we have here?
Yeah, so many of them are just across the board different. When you think about the Grand Canyon, without question, there's been 10,000 years of human history in there.
Hmm.
And that part's super interesting to me. Some of the trails through the Grand Canyon have been used for a long time. They're natural and they make sense. They follow waterways. But then you look at the South Kaibab Trail or portions of the North Kaibab Trail, and the trail itself is like a militaristic assault onto the landscape. And it's the trail, there's no reason for a human being to be going down the cliffside as we do in the South Kaibab Trail. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. It's the evolution of humans and it's the evolution of trails. But what's important is to kind of recognize that the trail going down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon is what makes that experience possible. And to recognize that while you're on the trail, you are having not just a natural experience, but you're also having a very human experience.
Right.
And to recognize that it was in part greed. I'm thinking more about the Bright Angel Trail. Greed, a gentleman back in the late 1800s that really wanted to capitalize on the Grand Canyon and charge every single person on the trail, $1 to $3 to use the trail. That, in fairness, he helped build or built with his team of men. But then to also recognize that there's other trails out there that are very natural, and it's the way that humans and animals and for that matter water and wind have been moving for centuries.
Just like that zigzag trail down into the Grand Canyon, this is kind of where our conversation is going. I want to go back to the zag and get to the criteria. We mentioned one point of the criteria, which is if you're in reasonably good shape, you should be able to complete it in 24 hours. What are some of the other criteria points?
Yeah, thanks for swinging back to that. So another one is like, does the trail make sense? That I was just out on the west coast, or sorry, the east coast in New England. I did a couple trails out there. One of them, the Pemi Loop, or the Pemigewasset Loop, a classic, 31-mile loop, 9,000 feet of climbing. When you get to you know, as you're cresting the first of the mountains, we did it counterclockwise. And the first mountain is Bond Cliff. And from Bond Cliff, you look across the valley and you see the next 6 or 7 mountains that you're going to be hitting throughout the day. And you're just seeing like, this makes sense. Like, this is everything is right about this trail. It is a 1-day effort, whether you're hiking it or running it. And honestly, most runners are hiking it. It's just simply so steep all day long that's how you get around it. So does it make sense? Is there some history? Like, ideally, is there history to the trail? Whether that be in the running of it in more recent years, or the hiking of it before that. And then kind of the last criteria, which helped my 2 collaborators and I kind of wrap our head around, the subjectivity of this project. Can we suggest with confidence to a friend that has a 3-day weekend, hey, get on a plane or get in your car and go do this thing. It's worth it. Like, and so that's kind of like putting my own, putting myself on the line, like checking myself a little bit. Like, if I'm going to tell a friend to take his time, money, and effort, I'm going to be pretty confident that, that he should go, or they should go and do this thing. So that's helped us, look at one trail and push it up off the table, and then add a different trail onto the table.
So the book hasn't been completed or published yet, but you can get glimpses of it at johng.com. What trails have you published so far on the John G website?
So published on the John G website, we've done the first one was the Cactus to Clouds Trail that starts in Palm Springs, goes up to the top of San Jacinto Peak, and then back to Palm Springs. It's the largest elevation gain of any single trail in the continental United States.
Wow!
In that short period of time. It's really incredible. You start doing the research on these things. We have this fascination with Yosemite and some mountains, the Tetons. The Tetons are absolutely incredible. You look at them from 50 miles away, and you know how impressive they are. But standing in downtown Palm Springs, looking up at the top of San Jacinto, you don't realize that you're looking up at the biggest relief, in one of the biggest reliefs in all of North America. And that there's a trail that goes from the art museum to the summit and back in under 30 miles. It's really absolutely impressive.
And Ricky, I have done that, but I used the tram. I got in there, and it was amazing at the top how cool, much cooler it was than at the bottom where you start. It has a climate change that I think really inspired someone to build a tram on that to get some relief from the heat of the Palm Springs area. I wish I could say I did it by feet, but there was a sign at the bottom that warned you of rattlesnakes and people that didn't come back because they didn't bring water.
I am sorry, I missed the last 20 seconds of that.
They were probably the best 20 seconds this podcast has ever had. I talked about how there's a climate change from the bottom to the top, incredible, like 15 or 20 degrees. And when the bottom is 110, it is quite a relief at the top. And then I talked about the sign that's there warning inexperienced hikers that this is no joke, that there are snakes and you need to bring water or you're not coming back. And it wasn't water for the snakes.
It's worth a try, though.
So what other runs have you already documented?
Yeah, so the Lost Coast is another one. I did that. I've done it several times now, but most recently I did that back in January with a friend, and great time of year to do it. We missed this insane rainstorm by a couple days, and we just got bluebird skies for a couple nights out there. It was really special, and a good reminder to myself because that's an important trail to pay close attention to the conditions, specifically the tides. You need to get through 3 different sections on that northern trail before the high tide comes in. And my buddy and I miscalculated the tides. We just banked on the low tide, but now I know there can be a high low tide, and that high low tide was still too high for us to cross, which meant that we got to go up and over about 14 miles in order to get 2 miles up the coast.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, good little learning experience for me personally. And then let's see, we recently published the double crossing of the Grand Canyon. Again, I did that one, I don't know, 10 years ago, made a race out of it with a few friends, Ryan Gelfie, David Laney, Dylan Bowman. There was a Flagstaff fella. And it was 2 days, I think, after Rob Carr. We were all trying to go for the record, which at the time was, I think, 6:55. I think Dakota Jones had it. And all of us were going for the record. But fortunately for Rob Carr, unfortunately for us, the weather window was in his favor. He had gotten it 2 days earlier in 65 or 70 degree heat. And we were out there 2 days later in 90-degree heat, and all 5 of us completely blew up. It was a blast.
It was a blast.
Yeah,
that is a complete trail runner's comment.
Totally.
We blew up. It was a blast.
Yeah. When everybody blows up, you gotta laugh.
I love it.
And so I rallied some friends here from Santa Fe, and we went out and did it again just a month or two ago, end of May. And it was super fun, very different vibe, just kind of cruising across, taking pictures, really enjoying ourselves.
You know, one of the things that I'm learning from you, Rickey, is as you go and do one of these classic trails, so get your ideas from Rickey and his collaborators about these classic trails, but then go do the research. And I go back to our friends Tim Tweetmeyer, Bob Crowley, and some others that do history expeditions, where they do this just massive amount of research about a trail, and that becomes your why. We talk about that all the time. When you enter a longer race, you need to have a purpose behind why you're out there. And I think that the research and finding out about the ecology and about the history and the geology, I mean, that gives you a why to go out and just, make this a big event that you're going to remember the rest of your life.
Totally. Yeah. Just doing that research makes it so much more rich.
Yeah.
And I've become pretty obsessed with it. It's like, when I go and do one of these trails, my web browser right now has like 15 pages open, all dedicated to researching the Lewitt Trail. And of course, now none of those pages tell me if it's in Oregon or Washington. No, I'm just kidding. One of them does. But yeah, just kind of for me, like I enjoyed going to school. I enjoyed history and all of the sciences and stuff. But I'm now 43 years old. School's 25 years behind me. And I think we all need to kind of find ways that keep our brain, super curious. And for me personally, this has been that return to school and history and human history and ecology and geology and just really, really enjoying every moment of it.
Do you think that 50 is going to be a stretch to get, or you're going to work real hard at trimming down because you have 100 ideas? Where do you land on that number? A tough one or an easy one?
50 is going to be easy to get. Trimming it down to 50 is going to be the hard part, and we also know that we're going to ruffle some feathers with our decisions. And it's a challenge. A lot of people have asked, like, is there going to be one for each state? And no, there's not going to be one for each state, and some states don't get them. California, like, has a whole bunch of them. The West Coast has a bunch of them, but uh, another kind of criteria that we're going for is, like, can the collection of the 50 trails paint a broad picture of the United States? And so trying to get a little bit of everything in there. And so, yeah, toying around with some ideas of trails in the Southwest, that aren't in national parks, that aren't going across Zion, but something perhaps a little bit less heard of, that might provide a better example of the region.
Rickey, are these trails that you have done previously, or are some of them trails that you've just heard of that this is the once in a lifetime experience?
It's a mixture of the two. So
Okay.
definitely some of them, have their own lore and history to them. And some of them I've done personally and feel like people don't talk about them or don't experience them, and so it's going to be a mixture of the two. But at this point, with my two collaborators, we definitely have a list of 50. We've got an additional 10, 15 trails, that are kind of there, for when we do, one of the 50 trails, and we're like, it's a cool trail, but, like, would I tell my buddy to spend his 3-day weekend going out there to do that trail? Maybe not. And so, yeah, the list is there, and by the time we hope to have this as a completed project, the all of the trails will have been run by at least one of us.
Nice.
And a personal goal, I'd love to run all of the 50 trails in my lifetime. So,
Is there a trail on your list that you haven't run that you're really excited to run, that really intrigues you?
well, that's the thing about it, is, like, literally every single one of them that I haven't run, I'm excited to run.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I can narrow that down to, I've never run. I haven't spent much time in Florida. I'm excited to go there and run a trail there. Um, let's see. There's, like, just doing, because it's the most upcoming. Just doing the Lewitt Trail in a couple weeks. I've never done that. Fun fact: the Mount St. Helens most recent eruption was on my birthday.
Oh,
Yeah, May 18th, 1 year before my birthday. So I
what
when I
what
was
year? What year was
1980.
that? Yeah, I was going to remember. I lived in Wyoming when it was erupting, and we saw ash from that
Wow.
eruption in
Yeah,
Wyoming.
that's cool. Yeah, I like to blur my eyes at history for that one, just to, like, it blew up on my birthday 1 year away. Yeah. But it's an easy date for me to remember. May 18th, 1980.
Nice.
But let's see. Yeah, I've never done the Nopali Coast in Hawaii.
Mm.
A little destination trail run. Um, that one's legendary. Um, let's see. I have done a lot of Isle Royal in the middle of Lake Superior, the Greenstone Trail. I'd love to get back and do that in a single effort. The way I did it before was kind of as a fast packing trip. Um, and then, gosh, there's so many.
What are any of these trails also races like the Western States Trail? Is that on the classic trail list, or because it's a race that disqualifies it?
So it doesn't necessarily disqualify it, but we have found that the bulk of these trails exist in political designations that don't allow races.
Mm.
So wilderness or national parks. And yeah, that I would have to think on that regarding. Let's see. Now that I'm thinking about it, there is one trail that's also a race, the Kasugi Ridge Trail up in Alaska, 40-mile point to point, largely above tree line. On a clear day, you have views of Denali the entire day over your right shoulder if you're going north to south. But Alaska is a different beast.
So you mentioned, I think you gave the answer away with the last one. You called it point to point. Are these many of these all point to point or loops? Do I have to have two cars to pull this off?
Some of them, logistics are definitely a concern. And so I think I tallied it the other day at about 20 loops. And then the remaining 30 it's kind of like 5 out and backs and then 25 point to points.
So plenty to choose from. If you're a solo effort, you still have a number of trails to choose from.
Totally. And we hope to provide enough information in these to make those point to point runs more accessible to single runners, to solo runners.
In the guidebook, do you give it a difficulty rating, or do you put any disclaimers? This is not for the first time trail runner, or if I'm looking through it and I go, oh, that looks like a fun trail, but it is way out of reach for me. How do I know whether, or is that just on me to go do some more research on it?
No, so definitely there's going to be disclaimers. We haven't quite figured out a scale yet. I was toying with like a 1 to 10 scale, kind of using the Grand Canyon double crossing as the most well-known and putting that at, say, a 7, your efforts at a 7. I would say with all of the trails, kind of it serving as a more inspirational book, all of the trails are a solid effort without question. And that's kind of our goal is to appeal to new runners in an inspirational format, and to serve as a guidebook for the more seasoned runners that know what it is to be out on trail for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, which some of these trails are, and a lot of people, myself included, benefit a lot from being on trail for 20 hours. There's a lot that goes through your head, and we work through a lot of stuff with the assistance of nature as healer. So
I'm going to make a recommendation. You don't have to take this, and you don't have to credit me in your collaboration or your credits in the book, but might I suggest the Scoville scale? For peppers, you can give it a Scoville rating, and that way you have a bigger breadth. That's not 1 to 10. I don't know how high the Scoville scale goes. How far does it go? Do you know? Like 2,000, 5,000. I don't know what it is.
And then
but you don't have to use it. No obligation there, Ricky.
I like this idea. So, because everyone has access to hot peppers, you can just have someone go to the store, eat the habanero. And then
exactly.
The Grand Canyon is the equivalent to 3 habaneros. Make sure that you go to the bathroom and have the full experience of the habanero. You need to, because that's also part of the
in
Grand
and the
Canyoning.
out.
Yeah,
the in
that's
and
the Grand
the out.
Canyon as well. So, yeah, I'm going with it.
The out equates to the recovery after the race. Is that what we're talking about? So
yeah, maybe not after. It could be during. Yeah.
Hey, I've got to think that with with GPS being out there, it really makes it possible for us to show up to an unknown location and then be able to stay on that trail with confidence. And maybe a decade or so back, we really couldn't do that. This is the perfect timing for technology and this program to all come together.
Hey, Freeman, there's something called a map and a compass.
Oh, no.
That people used for centuries.
All right, Ricky. Yeah. So I've been called out. I don't know which way to hold the compass, and I don't know where my map is. The GPS works well on my phone.
No, but you hit on something that's super important about the timing of this book, and that is the technology with phones and mapping, technology and advancements in gear, hacks, shoes, just knowledge of salt intake, nutritional intake. All of these things build on each other, and we're let's see what else is kind of there. Just being able, like the proliferation of information, being able to look on a website on a Monday to see if the water is on or off on the north side of the Grand Canyon for your run on Tuesday. That's pretty important information.
Yeah.
And that was possibly, we could have found that out, 15, 20 years ago, but you would have had to really know where to look. And so for all of these reasons, like just getting out there into the what we might consider deep wilderness is more accessible than it's ever been before. And so long as people do it responsibly, then I think it's exciting to offer this up as possibilities for people that they might not have thought about before.
To Don's point with GPS, does your guide also include a downloadable GPX file?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about your compass, Scott? Your compass and map.
That's redundant. I always carry a compass and a map as a redundant, because you never know whether your phone's going to crack. You're going to drop it off a cliff.
It's totally true.
I always take a map and a compass on long trails.
Yeah. No, leave no trace. The 10 essentials. There's a few things here that we are being cautious and aware that we are offering up something that is potentially dangerous to a lot of people if they're ill prepared.
Good point.
And we want to make that very clear throughout this.
Yeah, this just makes us all aware of the danger so we can prepare for it and make sure we're ready. So I think you're doing something of great value. What about website collaboration? So if I've done it, can I submit a couple pictures or a couple comments or kind of share in the enthusiasm with this community that you're starting about the greatest 50? And I want to be part of that tribe of the 50. And so I want to submit and include some of my experiences beyond the 2,000 words. I might have 100 more that I want to share with people that I found out.
And you could rank it on the Scoville scale. Say, Rickey says it's 5 habaneros or 2,000.
Clearly 6.
I found it was clearly a 6 habanero run.
Yeah. And I ate the stem too, and the seeds, the whole thing.
Yeah. I like that idea. That's I'll have to explore our Squarespace parameters and see if that bumps us up into the next bracket. But no, I do love that idea. As I said at the beginning of this, that the Facebook page for the double crossing of the Grand Canyon, I find to be immensely inspirational. There's a lot of information on there, and a lot of support from people that did it the day before. I just saw a guy and his daughter. She's 12 years old. They just completed the Grand Canyon double crossing, and I just think it's really cool. I'm not on Facebook all that much, but that's one of the sites that I go to and just kind of give a little thumbs up and get inspiration from there.
Well, we've got as you're looking at your Squarespace capabilities, we have a lot of listeners out there with some skill sets in that area. Maybe they want to try to contribute to this and bring some of their resources to this website development and community collective and for suggestions. We don't know, Scott. Somebody could be sitting out there eating a habanero and ready to get involved.
They're willing to donate a gel here and there, right?
That's right.
Hey, so where can we find all this information? I mean, I know that I've gone on to the John G site and you can see on there some of the trails. Do you have your own site? And then the follow-up question is, when will this all be published in a book that I can put on my coffee table and be inspired instead of watching Friends reruns?
So first question is what, Scott? Let me get this.
First question is, where do we find it?
Okay, coffee.
Where do we find these trails?
And then coffee table. Got it.
And then the coffee table book.
Got it.
Yeah, so for right now, you find it best on the John G website. They have been doing a great job putting together photos and the writings that I've been doing and information. And that's the best place to see it right now. We are working on a website, and this is all. So thankfully, I've been through the book writing process once before. Yeah, still daunting, but a little bit less so. So we're in the preparing a pitch, and then we'll move on to pitch, and then hopefully pick up a publisher early next year, and then have something completed by the end of next year. So that's really the goal in all of this. Yeah, that's light speed in the book publishing world. So.
Forgive me, but I didn't know that you were a previously published author. Was this on trail running or quantum physics? What was the book about?
2017, I ran across the United States from South Carolina to San Francisco, 3,700 miles, self-supported, including a weird little 300-mile paddle down the Tennessee River on a stand-up paddleboard.
Nice.
Wrote a book about it called Cross Country, published by Chronicle Books out of San Francisco. That came out in it came out height of the pandemic, actually, 2020, which was an interesting time and perhaps a beneficial time for a book to come out. I was grateful for a lot of people that were looking for inspiration at home that bought it.
Rickey, was that the hardest run that you've ever done across America? 3,700 miles, you said that run, and a 300-mile stand-up paddleboard. Did you have?
That was like 100 of the hardest runs that I've done. No,
all right. Is it in the book?
Yeah, it's in the book. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was without question. There were days there that were extremely challenging, and then there were days there that were just purely blissful. There was hours there that had the same dynamic that I was on, having the time of my life, and then 30 minutes later, I was wishing I was at a home in a bed doing anything. But
it's crazy how that happens. You can have both that in that frame time, 30 minutes.
So close. Yeah,
the best time
it's
ever.
Very manic.
Yeah. And I wish I wasn't here. All in the same same hour. You're experiencing that.
Yeah.
Hey, Rickey, in my exhaustive research, which we've already identified can be erroneous and outdated, I saw a quote that you quoted on your website or somewhere where you requoted Edward Abbey's sentiment that wilderness is not a luxury, but a necessity of the human spirit. How do you understand that quote? What does that mean to you, and how do you interpret it?
Yeah, I just, I mean, my understanding and interpretation of it is that we, as I kind of mentioned earlier, and I think this goes back 150 plus years, have kind of a misguided sentiment that we are separate from wilderness, that we are separate from nature. And I don't personally believe that to be true at all. And in going into nature and recognizing that, it's not an other, that it is us, and that we are part of nature. We are helping form nature just as much as nature is helping form us. I think in that sense that it's essential. Yeah, it's I don't know how to expand beyond that right now, other than you know it when you feel it, you know it when you're out there. And this is when, for me, racing has kind of moved its way to the back burner. I never officially retired from racing. I still throw a bib on and enjoy it. But I think the real power in running, and in trail running and in mountain running, is in being out there and just being quiet and listening to what nature's feeding you.
No, this
So
may be too far out there, Ricky, but I don't think so. Do you feel that the trail knows we're there? Do you think they're a partner, a companion? Do you feel a sense of oneness, and together you're doing it? The trail has a personality, a character, and is compassionate, empathetic, and all those things. Sometimes can be harsh and a lesson teacher. And maybe the trail sitting there waiting to hand us our next so we can grow as runners and humans. Now that definitely is out there. I heard those comments because it's in my headphones. That was a crazy man speaking, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that sentiment. I believe that I like that idea of a trail being sentient and feeling us just as we're feeling the trail. I think that it is. I like the idea of it. I think it's possible. I think I've spent a lot of time both with this project and a lateral project. That's a different story. But just thinking about how humans move through environments, and how animals move through environments, and how the environment itself moves through itself. And I kind of brought up the South Kaibab Trail earlier in this podcast as being, pretty far-fetched from that element of being natural. And so, yeah, I think that there are some trails that are certainly better connected to nature, and others that aren't, but provide that experience. And yeah, I I spend a lot of time thinking about the South Kaibab Trail because there's really nothing like it in the world. It's they used actual dynamite and steam blasters to carve out that trail in the cliffside. So the trail is far from natural, and I suspect that in a make-believe world, erase humans for 100 years, and that trail would be reclaimed by nature pretty quickly, as opposed to a more natural trail, which keeps finding its own way through the environment.
I'm going to continue with my theme a little bit since you didn't laugh it off. Do you think maybe that since that trail is far from natural, that it has a different personality or character than one that came across more naturally, blown up with dynamite and steam and created? Does it have the same feel to it, or does it feel somewhat synthetic as you're out there, or man-made? Can you feel that?
To me, it definitely feels man-made and synthetic. And in that it provides an experience, frankly, that gets people in trouble oftentimes. If you've been paying attention this year, there's been 5 deaths in the Grand Canyon. I believe most of those have been exposure, heat related. And that's simply, in my opinion, if it was as challenging as it should be to get into the Grand Canyon, probably those 5 people would have turned around well before they made it deep into the canyon. So I do believe that there is an element there that can be felt.
That trail is still angry, and it took those. It is. Yeah, I think
it could be. Yeah, but with that said, do I still consider it worth our time and effort and worth a trip across the country? Absolutely. The human nature interface is a constant dance, and I think that it's always worth throwing your hat in the ring for it.
When you said a constant dance, trail running is sort of a dance. Dance with intensity, dance with the elements, dance with the severity of whatever you're up against, of taking our body and recognizing potential limits, capability, matching it against the profile, and then stitching together a plan that works. even the best runners can find a plan that doesn't work. And even the most inexperienced, not inexperienced, but someone that without the same abilities as that elite that is out in front can still put together the perfect day too. It is a dance, recognizing what you have and what you need to do, and then making strategic plan to make it happen. And I think that's what's cool about a book of 50 of, okay, you know who you are. Here's what you're up against. Now put together a strategy that's successful.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like most of these trails, hopefully all of them, kind of follow a similar theme, where one could be able to kind of look at the inspiration for it, look at the information, the data, and be able to show up with all the right gear and have the a really pleasant experience.
Hmm.
Hey, Rickey, thanks for putting this together. Again, it's called The Trail Runner's Handbook, a field guide to classic trails of North America. You can't find it on Amazon yet, but it will be down the road sometime. Where you can find it is at johng.com. And on that homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see a Trail Runner's Handbook. It currently has 3 trails on there, as Rickey said: the Cactus to Clouds, the Lost Coast Trail, and the Rim to Rim to Rim, the double crossing. When do we expect to see more on the website?
We're going to be doing 3 more through the end of the year. I'm going to not mention which ones they are. I want folks to go out to John G and check them out. Hopefully it causes some discussion, and and perhaps we get some more inspiration for this project ourselves, and hear about a trail that we hadn't heard about. Always a possibility. And psyched to see where the project continues to go.
This sounds like a great book, one you can open up even if you don't have a trail picked out yet. Just thumbing through it as just a 2,000 words, a quick, easy read, and you can put yourself on the trail and see, I wonder how I would do on this trail. I wonder how I would enjoy this trail, and trying to find one. It sounds like a good read, even if you don't plan on doing all 50.
Yeah, and sometimes we need a little inspiration, and I have a website where you can go and say, what am I going to do next? What race am I going to do next? Maybe it's not a race. Maybe it's one of these classic trails. I'd like to get a couple good friends together.
Totally. I would hope so. It's not a pushback against racing by any means, but there's been very few races that I've run in my life that compare to the trails that are not available to race on. And I think that's for a reason. I think that if they're, the Grand Canyon has a great history of there being races, and it nearly exploded into a 1,000-person race before the Park Service shut it down. And I actually think that, oh gosh, can you guys still hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. My mom's calling.
We're going to keep that in. We're going to keep that in the podcast. Are we, editor?
Yeah.
She has a submission for you. She has a race a trail of her own she wants to put in there.
I'm sure she does. Yeah.
What were you saying, Rickey, before your mom called?
Yeah, just that I hope that these trails, I think that the putting in an effort, we've only got so many efforts that we can put in a lifetime, and I've recognized that for myself. And am I going to go do a race course which may or may not agree with me, agree with my sense of nature, or of being out there, or am I going to go spend some time in a different sort of wilderness, where I might gain something different out of the experience.
I've thought as you peak and get in shape for something, and you've got your running legs, and you have some fitness that you've created, and you ask yourself, what else can I do with this fitness? Instead of just selecting another bib and trying to string those together, there are other things you can do with that fitness that's remarkable. And don't waste the fact that you are at this pinnacle of your athletic performance or your peak, find something like this and put it in place, put it in between some races, something to help support like trails. It's a lot of climbing and altitude I'm coming up. I'll pick one of these and put myself out there and use some of my fitness for that. What else can I do with this fitness? If you ever ask that, this looks like a place you can put it.
I agree completely. Again, using that word dance, I think that it's important for us to take advantage of our fitness and in our time and our ability to appreciate some things and put marry that together with the best that nature has to offer.
And not always be on the clock. Not say, "Oh, I gotta," enjoy it. Enjoy your fitness.
No one takes more mid-trail naps than I do these days.
Oh, Ricky, you and I should compare notes because I feel pretty comfortable finding a spot.
Yeah.
Don knows how to find the soft dirt.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Hey, Ricky, thanks so much for letting us know a little bit more about us. I'm excited about it. I'm going to go. I've looked at the rim to rim to rim, but one of the trails that I've always wanted to do is the Lost Coast Trail. It's not too far from where Don and I live. Don, we need to put that on our bucket list and go do the Lost Coast.
Let's do it. And what if we do it in September, Ricky? Is that a good month to do that trail?
Yeah, September is a great month. The Lost Coast is a trail you can kind of do year round, being that it's on the coast and you're not worried about excessive heat or snow. But yeah, September would be absolutely phenomenal for that trail.
All right, Scott. I'm doing it in September. I hope you join.
Ryan, you going to come?
Yeah, I'll join.
He says he'll join. All right.
There.
Hey, if you want to learn more about Ricky, he does have a website that, of course, we'll link in the show notes, as well as all the other links that we've talked about, rickygates.com. Ricky, thanks for coming on. I look forward to seeing what other classic trails appear on the John G website.
Awesome, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on your show. Love rapping about this.
Hey, it wouldn't be a show without the guests coming on, so we appreciate you.
So find a classic trail, put on your shoes, get a lot of gear, be safe, and run
Maz.